This might sound too good to be true, but it's real. And you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to include all the things I talk about as links in the description so you can check them out for yourself. If you think what I'm saying doesn't make sense, click the links to read the publications yourself and let me know why you might disagree in the comments. You are going to recover from OCD. It's just a matter of time. I'm not just trying to reassure you. I looked into the stats for OCD, and it's true. I'm actually really surprised no one else has talked about this yet, because it seems like something that people who have OCD should know. It's really interesting. I'm going to go through some of the numbers that I found with you quickly, so please bear with me. The average age of onset for OCD, which means when people usually get this disorder, is about 19. So that means by the time you turn 19, if you're going to develop OCD in your lifetime, you probably already have it. If you're over 30 and you don't have OCD yet, you're pretty much in the clear. Most people develop it before they turn 30. Why I'm mentioning this is to kind of highlight when most people start to get affected by OCD in their lives. Here's what's interesting. OCD rates decrease with age. So that means the biggest group of people who have OCD are in their 20s. Less people have it in their 30s. Even less people have it in their 40s and 50s. And only a very small percentage still have it after 60. When I looked at those stats for my own videos, I noticed that in my audience as well. No one is watching that's over 60. It doesn't mean that they don't exist, but there's much, much fewer people suffering with OCD at that age. Why is that? How do they get better? I actually don't know. All the research that I've read just explains what can help people recover or what can make recovery harder, and also what other things are going on in the lives of people who aren't recovering, like substance abuse or having a different mental illness at the same time as having OCD. So there's no clear reason why there's less people with OCD as they get older. Maybe people eventually find a treatment that works for them. Maybe what they were obsessed with just kind of resolves itself over time. Like if you're afraid of hurting your kids, well, eventually your kids grow up, so they're not as vulnerable, and maybe that's no longer your obsession. Or maybe there's less responsibility for seniors, and their stress level overall goes down, making their OCD thoughts more manageable. But the bottom line is, yes, you're probably going to stop having OCD at some point in the future. But here's the problem. Like I mentioned earlier, most people who have OCD are younger. So they need to wait a long time to get to 60 plus. Maybe it's a little bit comforting to know that you'll likely get better eventually, because everybody mentions that OCD is chronic and lifelong. But that still means you have to suffer with OCD for a really long time. That's a very crappy deal. And if you watch any of my other videos, you know what I'm going to say. The treatments for OCD that are supposed to be available to get you better do not have a great track record. Only 1 in 3 people recover after doing ERP treatment, and only 1 in 5 people fully recover, meaning they don't have OCD symptoms at all anymore. In a lot of the research that I've read, the authors also mention that the treatments really need to improve to help more people. And it's pretty obvious that they do, so that more people can get better and live a better life while they're still young. I had OCD, and now I don't, so I fully recovered. I'm going to tell you how I fully got better, and maybe it can help you too. I probably had OCD my whole life, but I was only diagnosed when it got really bad in my 20s. I did ERP treatment, I was on medication, but I didn't get fully better, which was my ultimate goal, obviously. And it just stayed like that for multiple years. My progress kind of just started to stagnate, but my symptoms still got worse. There was nothing anyone could do. They just told me OCD was chronic and to keep trying different medications and different talk therapies. Nothing was getting me to stop thinking about my OCD topic and interacting with my thoughts. I got to the point where I was ruminating and interacting with my OCD thoughts for 4+ hours a day, sometimes even more than that. One day, I just reached a breaking point, and I decided to sit down and map out exactly what I was doing in my head. I realized that each time OCD thoughts came into my head, I was doing the same exact pattern, no matter what the thoughts were. The thought would come in, I'd get anxious, afraid, ashamed, or feel an urgency to do something. I would do something compulsive to reassure myself and to make myself feel better in the moment. And I'd feel better for a while. But eventually, I'd start to think about that topic again in some way. A new scenario would come in, a new question, a doubt about the last conclusion I came to would just pop into my head, and then the whole thing would begin again. When I was doing this, I realized how many times I did this cycle, and how it never stopped me from having more thoughts like it in the future. So it was obvious. The cycle I was doing wasn't working. It wasn't getting me to stop the thoughts, or come to a conclusion that was lasting. Seeing this, and understanding that the whole cycle was the problem, I decided I wasn't going to engage with anything related to my OCD thoughts, ever again. When the OCD thoughts would come in, I would stop myself from continuing to think about that topic and playing things out, no matter how I felt in the moment. I already talked about this in a different video, my End Your OCD guide. So if you're interested in learning about the steps that I took and following the steps for yourself, I recommend checking that out. Commitment is the most important thing to do for this method. You have to commit beforehand to stop engaging with your OCD topic. That's the biggest thing that I've seen that's stopping people from fully recovering. They'll make their judgment that they won't engage with their OCD topic ever again, but when the OCD thoughts come in again, they'll get seduced by that emotion, that fear, the urgency that they're feeling, and go right back to interacting with it again. Even if you stop engaging with it most of the time, if you're still engaging with it some of the time, you're still feeding that cycle. You're still going to have these thoughts continuing. The clip I'm about to show you might not seem related to what we're talking about, but it is, and I'll explain it after.
What happened was a sea of fire, constant shooting, constant explosions. The sound was intense to the point of blocking your hearing. Everyone, all of us are scared of dying. That's clear to everyone. But it's important to overpower that feeling. Overpower it.
That was a soldier from World War II. That soldier, like you, was faced with a really difficult decision. He didn't want to die, and he said he was afraid to die. But he also couldn't live with the idea of the Nazis coming and killing his family and destroying his country. So he overpowered his fear of dying to fight against the Nazis. What you're feeling is probably similar to this situation. You feel like you have to interact with the fears you have in your head because the consequences are so dramatic and serious. That's why you keep interacting with them. But you're also faced with the obvious and terrible reality that you've been doing the same thing over and over again and interacting with the OCD thoughts for a really long time. That's what's actually ruining your life right now. Those two things are in conflict. You don't want to stop engaging with your OCD thoughts because they're really important, and engaging with them makes you feel better temporarily in the moment. But you also know that interacting with those thoughts is what's been causing you a lot of suffering in your life. One of those things has to win out. You can either continue interacting with those thoughts and fears forever, or you can make the very difficult decision to stop. But you have to stick to that decision, even when you're faced with your fears. You have to ground yourself when the OCD thoughts come in and see the reality that this isn't the first time that you've done this, and it won't be the last time if you engage with it again and falter and go back on the decision you made earlier. When that soldier was going to war, he was afraid. Everything in him was probably screaming to run away, to save himself. But he didn't. He stayed there and he fought even though he knew he could die, because he knew if he didn't stay and stick to his commitment, the consequences would be even worse. This is the kind of situation you're being faced with. Keep doing the same things, and you're going to keep having the same problems and ruining your life. You know what you need to do. You know that the things that you've been doing or the things that you're obsessing about are excessive, absurd, or incredibly unlikely. Most people who have OCD understand that. 96% have insight into their disorder, so it's not like you don't know what you're doing doesn't make sense, but you keep doing it anyway because of the emotions you're feeling in the moment. That means what's missing is your commitment to change, your commitment to do something different. If you don't make that commitment, you'll still eventually get better, but you will be stuck in this pattern until you get old. And if you wait until then, you'll have to sit with the uncomfortable realization that you could have taken the steps to get better sooner. You have to live with the regret of wasting even more years to this terrible disorder. I fully recovered from OCD using the method that I mentioned earlier. I recommend trying it as well. Even now, my brain is still the same. I know that I'm predisposed to this kind of thinking pattern. When thoughts are coming in and starting to cause me anxiety, or are starting to fit that pattern of OCD again, I can just stop myself. I know that I'm never going to have OCD again because every single time that OCD thoughts come in, I know what to do. Even if they're new thoughts, even if they're new themes. I kind of took the mask away of OCD and I know what the pattern is, so I can't be fooled by this pattern again. You can do that too. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend checking out that guide. I also made a course where I go in more detail and answer your questions directly. Check that out if you need to as well. And I also offer coaching where we can meet together and find out where you might be getting stuck in this method. I say this at the end of each of my videos because I really do think that most people have the power to stop their OCD and get fully better like I did. Make that commitment, fully. You have the power to end your OCD forever. I really do hope this is the last OCD video you watch.